So hey ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for tuning in for another channel C.G.E video. Today I'm finally going to be installing gauges in my 2004 PT Cruiser GT. For a while I've been wanting to do this, and for this one I'm finally going to be getting around to installing a boost gauge. I'm going to do an air-to-fuel ratio gauge as well. It's just a cheap one, it's not like a wideband or anything fancy. And also an oil pressure gauge. This is going to be part one. I'm going to do this in a couple videos because it's taking a lot longer than expected. To get it in one video, it would take a while to come out, and I'd have to condense it. So for this one, I'm going to get all the main stuff done. I'm going to be installing the pod or whatever you want to call it. Then I'm going to mount the gauges in, getting them wired up to power so they all light up and everything. We also get the boost gauge working by the end of this video. The other gauges, I still have some bugs to work out. Anyways guys, this is my first time doing any sort of wiring job like this, so bear with me. I hope you guys can maybe find this entertaining, and maybe we can even learn something by the end of this video. So anyways, without further ado, let's get started.
Mainstream. Flow like water, so I'm going mainstream. Yeah. Going mainstream. Damn.
I'm going to try to make this video somewhat educational, even though I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but follow along and hopefully we'll both learn something by the end of this video. Alright, so here's all the gauges I bought myself. I got an oil pressure gauge, I got air to fuel ratio gauge, or AFR, whatever you want to say, and I got a boost gauge. I'm going to be installing these two right away, I know. The oil pressure I might wait and get a oil filter sandwich plate, whatever you want to call it, but for now we're going to be installing these two as far as I know, and then we're going to be installing this. This is what I'm going to mount the gauges into. I'm going to put it like right about here, but in order to do that we got to pull the dashboard out of the car so we can make the cuts and everything. I don't think that's too hard to do. I think the first thing we need to do though is pull this plate around the power window switches, and there should be something like a bolt or something back in there that we'll remove, and then we can start popping things apart. But before I even get started, here's some of the tools and some of the random stuff that you're probably going to need throughout this project. First of all, a soldering gun, obviously, and some heat shrink soldering wire, or whatever you want to call it. I also got some of this flex tubing. That's kind of going to come in handy to protect some wires where they run. Also, this is what I'm going to use to wire the power to all the gauges for the lighting and everything. This is called, well, on the box it says add a circuit, but a fuse adapter is what they're often known as, or a fuse tap, or whatever you want to call it. Basically what this does is it's going to plug into a fuse. I'll probably choose like the radio fuse or something that is switched on and off with the ignition, and then I'm going to run the wires for the power to the gauges off of there, and hopefully everything works and I don't blow fuses. Also, something I'm going to be using a lot is a Dremel to cut through the dashboard, do that kind of stuff. I have a sanding bit, and this cutting bit is primarily what I'm going to be using. I bought this little kit at Walmart for like 20 bucks, the best thing ever. So if you don't have one of these, I would recommend picking it up. And this is just a cheap one-speed Dremel. Comes in handy for a lot of stuff, but definitely going to be using that today as well. Absolutely under no circumstances should you be using a screwdriver on this, but I'm going to anyways. There's a little red tab that pops here on the connector, and then you should be able to anyways, pull this sucker right out. Fancy. Before I go any further, I should probably disconnect the battery. I usually always forget to do that, but yeah, I don't want to die today. Right, and as far as I know, just gotta remove this screw. It should be like a 8mm or a Phillips head or whatever, and then stuff should start popping out here, and the dash will come out. Pulling this bolt out. I'm gonna start pulling the dashboard out. There's the little bolt. Whoops! I forgot you're supposed to pull the knobs. But they're off now anyways. Yeah, you see, these knobs, they go on here and stuff. You're supposed to pull them off ahead of time, but I forgot. I just pulled hard on it and they all popped out. But there's two more of these that need to come out. This is 7mm I'm using, by the way, to pull them out, but you can just use a Phillips head. Now the trick with the dash is don't pull up, pull out. That's what I heard on the, that's what they said on the forums anyways. Oh wait, I almost forgot. These need to come out. These should pop out. Well, that one came out easily. Woo, look at that. All right, now with the dashboard out of the car, we can get everything ready to mount up our gauge pods or whatever. Honestly, if you go with pillar pods, it's going to be easier to do everything like wiring and stuff, but I wanted to go with this more unique setup and it was a little cheaper to get into it, so that's why I'm going through all this. And also this is pretty much PT Cruiser specific, taking the dash out and everything, so as far as this goes, this is not universal as much, but once we get to actually wiring up the gauges, that's a little bit more universal, so no matter what you drive, you can probably learn something from it. Anyways, what we're going to do to get this to fit is, as you can see, this is slightly curved here. So when I lay this gauge on here, there's this little gap. So what we're going to do to take care of that is I marked up a line and I'm going to cut, like with a Dremel, a groove here so that this front will basically slide down into it and then it will be level. Alright, I think that fits good enough. I mean, the line's not perfect, as you can see, but so now what I think I'm going to do to run the wires down out is just cut like a big square around here and then just run the wires straight down through there and we'll call it good. Try not to get too fussy because I know this is all going to get covered up, you know, with the gauge pods. Try to clean it up a little bit, and I think once it's all in place, it's not going to look too bad. Alright, so now everything's cut out, I'm going to actually get this screwed down onto here and in place, and then I'm going to work on installing the gauges in it. These are the screws I'm going to try to use. They're actually sheet metal screws, but I have them laying around. So what I'm going to do to get these screwed in is I'm going to use this bungee strap and actually just strap it around here to kind of hold it in place. Alright, I'm going to fit the gauges in the holes. The boost gauge here on the left, see the lenses are tinted and they light up when the car turns on, but even though that's kind of aesthetically cool, I can't really see in there to know what gauge it is or if it's right side up. And since I have the room to right now, I'm going to actually plug the hose in the back. Of course, it's a little bit of a tight fit. Now I'm going to throw the AFR gauge right next to it. Just about to slide the oil pressure gauge in too, but I just noticed I think there's supposed to be a third wire on this, or I would think so. I'm gonna have to run a wire from here. It's gonna go to the sensor because I see the little letter S. So I'm just gonna throw this around the screw here. Right, there we go. Got that wire ran. I am going to mark it really quick just so you know I remember what it is. Right, everything's looking good up under here, so I'm going to loosely slide this on the back end of the dash. I'm not going to actually, attach it or anything, but I'm going to loosely get it slid in there and then figure out what we need to do with the wiring. Apparently my car has remote locks, and I was unaware because the key that I have for the car does not have a remote on it, but you could run the wires back through there somehow. But what I think I'm going to do is drill down through here and run things down around through here, then come out over in here, and this panel literally pops open right here. As you can see, there it is popped in. Literally just pops out and swings down. And then here's the fuse panel right here so I can run my fuse. Fuse number 14 is 20 amp, and it's the overhead console and the radio, it says. So that's probably where I'm going to run my wires in. So I just figured out where I'm going to run wires into the engine bay. Yeah, you can see it there. There was a plate bolted over that hole up in the engine bay here. It's literally doing nothing. You can see where it comes out under the hood here, right next to the brake booster. We're going to take advantage of that. So now it's just a matter of finding a good spot to run the wires down through. So I'm going to keep looking things over and I'll check back with you guys when I get it all figured out. That was my first time ever soldering something like that, and actually it was kind of fun. Basically what I did is I soldered all the reds together from all the gauges and wired them into this one 18 gauge, and I'm going to run this down, wire it into the fuse box, and then I'm just going to put all the grounds together and ground them probably someplace. I think they said you can ground it on this screw here or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out, but I'm just probably going to ground them near here because they're just for the lighting and everything. Alright, so here's my one red wire, and here's my little fuse adapter that I showed you guys earlier. I'll plug this thing in like so. I'm going to run the wire back around here, and I should be able to crimp connect the other wire up to it. Alright, I think that's looking good, and that looks like it's good to go, unless I do have to get another fuse for it, but we shall see. Alright guys, so I soldered the ground together, and I had the wrong bolt. It's not this bolt, it's this one, because it's got to be shiny, and someone on a forum said that it was fairly safe to ground here, so I'm just doing that for now. To test it out, wired it there, and we now have power to almost everything. As you can see, boost gauge and oil pressure are turning on. The AFR light is not turning on, and I can't figure out, I think it has to do with the yellow wire not being hooked up to what it has to be hooked up to. But it's kind of getting late now, so I'm going to call it for today. Tomorrow, something I have to do is I need to get more hose for the boost gauge. It's not enough to run into the engine bay to where I wanted to hook it up. But after that's done, we should be pretty much all downhill. This is turning out to be quite a project, but we'll make it. You gotta learn somehow. So, check out with you guys in the morning. Alright guys, back here the next day. I just made a run to get the stuff that I need to hopefully get at least those two gauges finished up this afternoon. I got my hose. I got all the hose, man. What I did was I stopped into, I think it was AutoZone I stopped at, and I just brought in the little piece of hose that came with, I'm going to keep laughing every time I say that now. I brought in this little piece that came with the gauge and just showed them what it was and told them I needed more of it. They didn't have any clear, but I figured this would be just fine. So I picked up some of this. I think I got 8 feet, so hopefully that'll be enough to run it through and to where I'm going to hook up. Now there's a vacuum hose that runs from the brake booster up to somewhere here on the intake. I thought about tapping into that, but what I saw somebody do online was they actually tapped into this. You can do that. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. I hate to like cut through anything like that I'm not too sure about, but I think we're just going to go for it anyways. Alright, so this T connector only loosely fits in this vacuum line, so I'm going to have to do something. That's ghetto as heck, but it'll work to at least test it out. Alright guys, moment of truth. Hopefully everything works. I got everything wired up, and I also wired in the yellow wire. I just extended it a little here, and then I wired it in a little further down with the rest of the power wires. Fingers crossed. It lights up. Fancy. I need to turn that gauge, but we'll worry about that later. So I guess I still have some things to figure out with the O2 sensor. I might have to install like a diode. From the research I did, some O2 sensors, they read, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but we might not be able to use that gauge for a little bit, but we'll work on that later. Alright guys, well I guess that's going to do it for this part of the series. It was really long, a lot longer than I wanted it to be, and not as much got done as well. As you can see, this turned out to be quite a job, and it was pretty complicated. But I mean, what do you expect? Again, this was my first wiring job, so I learned quite a bit from doing this, and hopefully I can continue to learn as get this job finished up. So stay tuned for a hopefully more interesting part 2, at least get the AFR gauge working somehow, and hopefully we'll get the oil filter sandwich plate and we can do the oil pressure gauge as well. Anyways guys, again, hope you enjoyed this quick little channel C.G.E video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Comment down below with any questions or just anything you would like to say. As always, be sure to go subscribe to see stuff whenever it comes out. Pretty sure the DTS is going to be making a return this weekend, so that's going to be cool. Anyways guys, thanks again for watching. You rock. God bless, and I will see you in the next one.